Yes, sir.
Yeah, along those lines, do you know what the status of lead testing for kids is and how consistent that is in town right now? And I mean, is that still being monitored? What are the current testing levels showing as far as lead in kids and blood tests and stuff?
So you wanted to tick me off right away, didn't you? let me tell you the answer to that because I'm highly disappointed. When this first started, I was not even I had no plans for running for politics. I was still in television. But I kept asking EPA and HUD the question because they were cleaning up yards, but they were leaving the house. Mm-hmm. And so I'm saying, well, wouldn't it make more sense to abate the house first and then do the yard? Okay? Well, HUD and EPA don't talk to each other. No. Federal government for it. They don't talk to each other. So we went about and spent, and I want y'all to write this figure down. We spent $300 million doing this. $300 million of federal taxpayer money to remediate these sites. Last year, I happened to go to an elementary school in the district, down by Miller Park. And the Methodist Teachers College was doing a health fair. And they tested, by the time I got there, they had tested 33 young people, 33 children. Kindergarten, I think that school goes kindergarten to fourth grade, I think. But they tested 33 young people by the time I got there. And I don't know how many they had tested altogether, but they had tested 33. All of them tested positive for lead. 3 tested positive so high that they referred them that night. And that's after all of this remediation. So are we having an effect? I don't know. It seems like we're not.
Because I know they've done a lot of the soil remediation.
They've done a lot of soil. We've done $300 million worth.
See, I lived in a house over 41st and Cass for years, and I couldn't even have my grandkids over there because I had 32 old windows. And they tested it, and they said you got lead dust in here. And
yeah.
You vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. No, not a vacuum cleaner.
They said that would take care of it.
Yeah, I got that.
My grandkids aren't coming over here, but I'm thinking, how many other kids right now are, and that's what I was asking, what have the tests been done, and what was the response to that testing? I mean, is there any reaction to that?
Well, people are upset about it, because we spent a considerable amount of money remediating the soil, but we didn't remediate the houses. We're starting to do that now through our Healthy Kids Alliance and a number of other. Chris Rogers wants to say something too, but we went through that whole process with that, and now it seems like to me we're almost back at square one. And the problem is, especially with lead, it diminishes your capacity to learn. It creates a propensity for violence, and we're not addressing it. And I'll tell you one other thing very quickly, and then I'll let Chris jump in. But when Brenda Council was on the legislature, we wanted to get those young people that were on Medicaid, at least the ones that were on Medicaid, to make sure that there's a checklist that doctors have to check when you go and test for various tests, measles, mumps, rubella, so forth and so on. They also test for lead. We found out, to the extent that several senators got so angry they walked out of a committee meeting. We found out that several of the doctors who were working with these Medicaid-eligible young people, they checked the box for lead, but they never tested. Yep, you got to know, and so now we're on top of it a lot more than we were. And the legislature is really on top of it right now because a lot of them were upset about the fact that doctors were checking the box and not testing them. So to answer your question, there is no answer to your question, I guess, because I really don't know where we are because they did it backwards to me. And so in order to do what we need to do with the houses now, that's going to be, that's kind of like pulling teeth. It's going to take some time for that. Chris?
Now, I think you should, just to follow up on what he said, the cleaning was a moment in time to handle just the Superfund piece of it, the core and all of that you don't get to. So the health department is still testing. It's still a priority on the health department. It hasn't went away. So if any of you all are ever in doubt, call the health department and we will come out and test it and check that to make sure it's there, because there's still some cases popping up. And, you know, we don't have the enforcement stick, but if the place is that bad, then they make a call to the police and they go out there in tandem. And the police has that enforcement power to do it. So I guess the point is, you shouldn't think it's done just because they did that cleanup. You have an older part of the city that the housing stock is still what it is. And so it's always going to be pertinent. And if there's any doubt, call and we come out and test it.
Are you talking about testing the soil?
If you got any doubt, we will test the soil, look at the house, the whole deal. And then if it's triggered like that, that's really, I mean, there's been last 2 years, the numbers aren't eliminated, but there's been 1 or 2 cases that have been, I mean, bad. And if that happens to some degree, that will trigger actions where we get at the landlord and everything else and make them do it. So there's still some mechanisms in place.
Okay. Yeah, Terry and then, who had a hand up? I'm sorry, Rhonda, go ahead. Rhonda then Terry.
Well, there's not only the health department, but you can also go through Omaha
Yeah, stand up so they can
Kids.
hear you a little bit more.
I'm sorry.
I should have brought a mic. I didn't.
It's okay.
Preston's been in my case about it, so because he's got a mic, so I'm gonna bring it next time.
I can talk louder. I scream over kids. I can talk louder.
Okay.
Well, you have the health department, but you also have Omaha Healthy Kids.
Yeah.
They will come out and do an assessment to your house and tell you if there's anything in there that's unhealthy for the kids. And then they're really good at like pointing you towards programs that can help remediate the problem. Like, my granddaughter tested positive and she was pretty high, and we found out I had a bear claw bathtub that had lead coming in from the drain. It wasn't my windows, it wasn't my walls, it wasn't my soil, because I had done all that. It was the bathtub. So Omaha Healthy Kids and the health department got together and they helped me. Physicians, she had said earlier that depending on your zip code, that's not true. The WIC department, the WIC, Women, Infants, and Children, is who actually tested my grandchildren for it. The physicians never did. You have to ask them to actually test your kids. So, but I mean, there are so many programs since that Superfund came through that will help you actually get that house healthy. And Omaha Healthy Kids, they do like an assessment, and they will go down the line, they will check your whole house and tell you if there's anything dangerous in that house. So they're awesome. So is the health department. They are amazing too, and they work together. My second thing is, you said that the MUD Walnut Hill Reservoir was $1.5 million for sale, right?
No, 1.1, 1.2 million assessed value.
Okay, and
What
then
they'll sell it for, I don't know. But
to
that's the
demo
assessed
it.
value. Demo is about 2 million.
But if it gets demoed or we put something else there, we lose our only water feature for these kids.
No, we
in
won't.
this entire community.
No, we'll keep the park.
You're
What we
gonna
did,
keep the
yeah.
park?
Before you came in, I let people know right away that when I was at the last meeting that they had at the theater,
Right.
you know, I heard loud and clear about the park, so I went back and got with my colleagues on the council. And right now, Rhonda, the park is not, it's not a dedicated park. Okay? The MUD, when they took ownership of that property, they took ownership of everything, including the park, but they contracted the keeping the park clean out to the city.
Okay.
So if the land bank were to take it, the land bank would take the park portion of that, turn that over to the city for us to dedicate for a park. And once it's dedicated a park, it has to stay a park, as you know.
Well, because what I had found out through working with the renovation of Yale Park, it costs $300,000 for a splash pad like you see over at Miller Park.
Yes.
But that's because of the plumbing and the pipes and everything else. This
They're
one already
in
has
there.
it.
Yep.
So it would cost $125,000 to actually put a smaller one there, being all the pipes are there. These kids have had nothing like that in a very, very long time. It would be worth it.
And once we get it, it's coming.
Thank you.
Okay?
I've been screaming that for years. Our kids
Yeah.
deserve
And
it.
once-
Why are they
once-
climbing
no,
up
once-
on a
and
little
once we
bitty
get-
fountain?
But first of all, we got to dedicate it. Okay, we got to dedicate it as parkland. So we've got two ordinances we've got to follow. One is to dedicate it as parkland, and the other is then to make it a park. Okay, so we got it's a two-step process, but we'll be done with that. And Brooke has already talked about splash pad activities. Okay?
Thank
You know,
thank
but
you.
I don't want Brooke, you, or anyone else to get ahead of ourselves because we got a lot of work to do yet before we even accept the property.
Our kids deserve it.
I know, but we gotta go through the steps, and I explained the steps to people today, and it's a pretty lengthy process. Okay, Terry.
Hey, Ben, can I
Yeah.
make one?
Oh, okay.
She made a point which I think you all should know in particular, sir. The numbers that you see for lead, I mean, the myth you need to get is that it's this perception that the lead situation is only happening around in the northeast and southeast part. But we see test numbers as far out in the outer parts of the county. So the point she made, you just need to be aware. Don't think it's contained to just your house and other things like that. When we see this thing GIS'd out and it's color coded for intensity, I was surprised to see a location way out by Valley. And so you just need to know it's a pertinent issue. It's not going to go. You just need to be on guard with your kids on.
Terry.
To that point, I think the larger conversation we need to be having as a community is the disparate impact that it has on our kids, children of color, and communities of color. And I think it's true it happens out in Valley and other areas because it's agriculturally related. In our community, it's related because of the pollution that's in our community. And I can speak to it because I had a child that died from asthma. I was raised in 25th and Kansas area. One of the conversations we've had long term, and it's been many years since he died, but our children test at a higher rate than any other kids in the state of Nebraska, and it does affect certain zip codes more than others, although it is throughout the state. So we need to have a larger conversation about environmental racism, historically, how it has affected our communities, and I really think we need a class action suit so that we can have something happen on the federal level as to how our children are dying. And not just how they're dying, but how they're being affected by the air quality and other things, and how that kind of trickles down in where they're placed in school, whether or not they're heavily medicated, how they're labeled in the school, and how they are funneled into the criminal justice system. It's all related.
Yeah, but let me tell you, let me correct you a little bit on one thing. Omaha, Nebraska is the largest Superfund site in the country. The second largest Superfund site in the country is Adams County in Hastings, Nebraska. That's the second largest, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's a story that it's a documentary that I wish I had done before I left Channel 7. But it's a fascinating story. But out at Hastings, Nebraska, it was the second largest ammunition depot in the world and the largest in the country. And it was on Hitler's top 10 list of places to be destroyed. The Hastings Ammunition Depot was manned by about 1,800 African-American sailors. Very dangerous work, but in the process there was a lot of death, there was a lot of contamination because of the ammunition that was used, because of the oil that was used, because they ran, and I think it's fascinating for you to go out and see it if you ever get a chance to get out to Hastings, Nebraska, at that ammunition depot. It's a fascinating story and it's a fascinating site. And they ran an underground railroad, which is why the Germans never saw it and never could see it, because it was all underground. It's a fascinating story. It's a documentary that I wish I could have completed. Somebody is going to complete it for me. But that is the second largest Superfund site in the country. Isn't it unfortunate that both the first and the second largest Superfund sites in the country are in Nebraska?
Where's the
That's
third?
not by mistake. Not at all.
What's the third? What's the third? Do you know what the third largest contaminant?
It's not in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the two largest ones are in the state of Nebraska. And one of them is a result of that old ammunition depot. And I don't know if they're ever going to, because the ammunition depot is 27 square miles. You could see it from space. It was that big. And so trying to clean that up is going to be more than a notion for anybody to attempt to do. But you're right about the environmentally, because it was in a certain part of town and in a lot of places, in a lot of cities around the country, same sort of thing happened as what happened here. So it was an environmental racism, as you correctly put it. But it's like everything else. It'll start here, but it's going to spread. And now it's spread. And now it's not just a Northeast Omaha or a Southeast Omaha problem. It's an Omaha problem that we got to fix.